Welcome to the Techspressionist Artist Interview Series. Today is February 5th, 2021. My name is Michael Pierre Price. I'm a Techspressionist artist out of Phoenix, Arizona. I specialize in creating abstract, algorithmic, and surrealist works. Today I'm pleased to conduct this artist interview with Roz Dimon. Roz has been working with digital media since 1984 and continues to be an innovator in this medium some 37 years later. Originally from Atlanta, she drove her VW Beetle all the way to New York City with her paintings filled with pixels. That led her on an exciting and unplanned adventure, which she will share more about with us today. Her latest works are immersive paintings that exist both on the wall and on the web simultaneously. Several of these are in major museum collections, including the 9/11 Memorial Museum. Roz is also an ordained interfaith minister, and she is a member of Carter Burden Gallery in New York City. For Roz, science and spirit are increasingly coming together in an evolving story, which I personally look forward to hearing more Roz talk about. Her handle on social media is Rozolution, and her latest project is a new kind of blog and memoir called artstory.net. Hi, Roz.
Hi, Michael.
It's good to be with you today. Why don't we get started with you sharing some important aspects of your background, like where you were born, where you currently live and practice and create your artwork, and the cultural influences that, kind of made you the artist that you are.
Thanks. Well, you may have heard it in my voice, but I don't know if I've said y'all yet. But even though even though I did drive up here, yes, in 1981, actually, in my VW Beetle, I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm from a very large and boisterous, outgoing Southern family, and it's hard to believe this, but I was a rather shy child. But the South was an influence, and I would say from the very beginning, I was the influences. My grandparents. I mean, when I was a baby, I could draw by the time I was drawing before I was talking, really. So that all came from my grandparents, and no one else in my family could draw. My father was an orthopedic surgeon, so he had this pretty renown in hip surgery, and his hands were really, that's the dexterity you need to be a good surgeon. Mother, very outspoken and outgoing. So art was always filled with peace marches for me, going to marching and all sorts of other things. I went to the University of Georgia, Lamar Dodd School of Art. And I guess those were my early days. There are probably more influences, but I'm just going to go ahead and open up this PowerPoint I have presentation and get into it, and we can just keep going if that's good with you.
Yeah, sure. So did you know you were going to be an artist from early on, or was there like some transformative moment in your life when you realized art, that's what that's who I am and what I need to do?
I think the people around me knew, my family knew, they called me Leonardo da Tutti. Tutti is my nickname. Everybody in the South has nicknames.
Oh, wow.
I can let this get out in the universe,
awesome.
But still. But they called me Leonardo da Tutti because I didn't talk much. I was so shy, but I drew a lot. And,
oh, wow.
And so other people knew, I guess I was an artist. But I don't think I really knew the meaning of being. It's a great question of what it meant to really be an artist. I mean, I could draw. I really could draw, and I had a real connection between my up here and my hand always. But I didn't really know what it meant to draw until I landed in a class at the Lamar Dodd School of Art, and I can talk about that in a minute before we open up this PowerPoint. But I had an instructor and it was a really great school, Lamar Dodd. It was wonderful, very rigorous. I also studied in Cortona, Italy, while I was with the Lamar Dodd School of Art. But the day that I started my drawing class, and he put my drawing along with others up on the wall, and he had us all go out and draw something in the driveway of the school. Like, I think there was a motorcycle parked there, and he said, now this person can really draw. I mean, look, she can draw, but what is she saying? Like, what? what does it matter if she could draw a perfect motorcycle, or if she knows how, what is she saying? What is she touching? What is she feeling? What is she thinking? And you know what? That was it. The
Wow.
rest is history. That's
Yeah.
when I went, oh, this is what it means to be an artist. I'm going to share my world through this language. And
Wow.
boy, that's when I knew
What an aha moment, huh?
it really was.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was a very aha moment. And I was so happy, that kind of joy, that you know who you are. I mean, I often think that people aren't shy. They just don't know who they are yet.
Okay.
So anyway.
Okay, go ahead and get your presentation
Yeah.
up on the screen here.
Yes, you can see I'm very reticent to talk now. I came out of the box and my mother said she's never going to go back in. I think that's probably true. Anyway, I'm kind of jumping in here. Oh, I knew the phone would ring. All these devices. Goodbye. Anyway, starting here, I have this screen up. When I got out of the University of Georgia, I did want to say, Michael, I'm kind of going backward, but I'm looking at our questions. Biggest influence coming up is New York City, but I did want to say before I get into that I think I may have said it, that both my grandmothers were really talented in art, and it all glommed on right onto me at one of 5 kids. And so that was always there. What we're looking at right now is a portrait of my mother after I graduated from the Lamar School of Art. I'm still in Atlanta, Georgia. And as I look back now, it's so interesting to me that technology was there from my very first show, which I did these portraits of people. I painted portraits, and this is about 36 by 24. This is of my mother, Annie Mitchell Dimon, Dimon, by the way. That's how you spell my name. Well, people always think it's diamond, like a jewel.
Okay.
Like Simon, but with a D. Anyway, this is a painting of my mother. And while my mother was sitting and all the other sitters were sitting, I decided to tape record them because they would talk once in a while when I'd be mixing paints and doing things. And so when you came into the gallery, all these portraits were talking off the walls. And I called the show Talking Heads in Atlanta, Georgia. It actually got covered by National Newsweek because it was just, they said, have you gone to this gallery where, you go in and you don't have to talk at all. It's already buzzing. The minute you come in, all these paintings are talking to you.
Oh, that's neat.
I just recorded, they could talk about anything they wanted, like I'm too fat, I love candy bars, or raising teenage children. My mother had great things to say about that. And, but it's so interesting to me that the technology entered even that first show, Talking Heads. Now, this was way before the Talking Heads group came along. But I will say the biggest influence in my life was this incredible city, New York City. And of course, thank you to Shutterstock. I did not buy this, but I always credit when I don't. And I always buy things if they're in my larger pieces. This is just for a presentation. But you can just see all those squares and all that information just going up in these spires. And boy, I just fell in love with New York.
So what prompted you to get in your VW Beetle to drive to New York City? Was it the fact that all great artists end up in New York, or was there something else that just spurred you on?
I was just I was walking faster and talking faster now that I was out of the box, and New York had always been in my mind since almost the beginning of my years in training. When I decided, at the Lamar School of Art, I went, I've got to get to New York.
Okay.
And I knew I didn't fit in the South really, it's a part of me. Yes, I do say y'all sometimes just to freak everybody out a little bit, but, it was pulling, and I knew the South wasn't where I just wasn't going to stay.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was my biggest leap, and I did it. So I was so glad I did. I mean, it was so difficult, very difficult, but I can't imagine these people are coming from other countries sometime, Let's go to the, I just want to put up this picture that I got off of Shutterstock or Alamy or wherever, because, you watch those movies about, some young actress comes to New York City, and the first scene you see her in her apartment, or him, and they're looking out over New York City. And This is my, ready? This is my first apartment in New York City. It was advertised as a garden apartment on the Upper West Side. This is the garden. This is the garden. And the rest of the apartment looked exactly the same way. I mean, I could take a bath, call my mother, I could cook my dinner and sleep and paint, and without even moving. You know, the apartment was so small.
Uh-huh.
And there was the fire department came up every week because the boiler exploded, and it was but I was so in love with New York. The minute I just love the hustle and bustle,
Yeah.
all of it.
Yeah.
Influences. I know that's something that is one of the questions here for Techspressionism. And interrupt me anytime if you wanted to say something.
Sure. I mean, I will let you talk about that, obviously, but I mean, I think that even though Techspressionism, which we'll get a little more into as your talk goes on and as we do our questions and such, but there's such a diversity of artists that are sort of coming together under this, this banner of Techspressionism, that understanding sort of where the aesthetic comes from each of the artists is a really interesting thing to find out about, because I think there's such a diversity there that it's nice to know sort of, well, you're using technology, but why are you using it in the way you are, and what really sort of motivates you, or who's motivated you, or what forms of expression have motivated you. So yeah, thanks for delving into that now.
Yeah, sure. The image I have on the screen right now is an artist named Ed Paschke. He's out of Chicago, and I saw his paintings early on when I was in New York, and I just thought they had this wonderful electronic electricity to them, just like the city itself, which I started responding to immediately. And it's not just about the style. He's also painting something about communications and about this interaction between this man and this woman, and they almost seem like they're in somewhere in outer space already. But I was always interested in that space between people, whether it was the mathematical pixels I could feel or the spirit between them. Laurie Anderson was also another artist. For me, life and art are the influences. It's not just this artist and that artist, which there are just many of them, I would say, because every artist is different. But in terms of artists, Laurie Anderson, I went to see her at the Palladium early on in New York, and she played that electronic violin, and she was wonderfully skilled, but there was also this incredible energy and relationship to people and the kind of access she brought to her work, which I love. There are all sorts of different digital artists. There are people who do academic, incredible intellectual, conceptual hacking, all sorts of things going on. I'm still very much a painter in a painter's world and in a visual world, and I'm really trying to reach people beyond the museum. I mean, I love going into museums, but I'm really trying to touch people and bring access and intimacy to this medium. So Laurie Anderson was an early influence. She could just rock the whole house, and it didn't matter if you were an artist or what. She had you, and she had a passion, and she was talking about cultural things and what was happening in politics. And it's larger than the medium, even though the medium is very important to me. I use all media, but this one has been the most influential because it speaks to today. I mean,
yes,
everybody has a computer they want to throw out the window, but it is also the very thing that has changed our whole world.
Right.
Nam Pike was another one. I mean, this isn't just about digital or early TV stuff. It's about the country and how we get along. I mean, we all agree. You can see all the colors and diversity of America. It's a great celebration. And this, I'm going right into, sometimes you'll see the side of my face because I'm looking at another screen when I show this. These are two paintings, early paintings in New York. I'd been there a year or two, and the paintings just started to fill up with these, you saw how loose my mother's portrait was. Yes, it was these loose marks, but all these, one is called June and December on the right, and the other is is called Bartok. And these are oil on canvas, and they're these sort of film montages. I'm painting like a movie in a moment already. but it's all about a flat. I like that flat 2D surface. I never get too layered up, except I do now in digital. But it's about a montage of things going on, and also there's a man out there in winter. He's thinking about the beach in June, and it's called June and December. And I'm actually painting little circles and squares of kind of information. And also the same thing about a bar talk, where two people are sitting at a bar. They're looking at these kind of lollipop-like looking trees, and the squares of their consciousness are infiltrating the space. And I did these pieces for years. I had started doing when I left Atlanta a little bit, and I call them information paintings. I was painting emotion, but I was also painting information.
Yes.
So, and I'm just quickly going way ahead, very recent. I'm still painting information, and these are just literally little crop close-ups of my recent work. On the left, it's the interior of a gun barrel, excuse me. I did a series of guns. Again, speaking to a cultural force out there. And this is literally a crop that is just 1 inch of the painting. And I felt like it shows a little bit more of the technical expression when you go in close to these pieces. And the one on the right is one of my DIMONscape interactive immersive paintings, where there's thousands of layers going on here. So it's just want to put that juxtaposition. But I'm going back to New York, which really was the biggest influence. This is a piece called Kevin and Jane Take a Walk in New York. I haven't gotten into digital media yet, but you can see I'm heading there. I tore up a New York Times crossword puzzle, and this is only about 11 by 14. This is mixed media. John Wayne is alive and well and writing the IRT, another information painting. And there's mapping going on, but it's just getting so tight. It's like I'm trying to paint math. I'm trying to paint something I don't have in the brush that I'm using. Again, this is a little looser, but everywhere I went, I was seeing these squares and this consciousness and taking notes. And I went to jury duty and I painted the judge. This is called jury duty. He's got the X's on the calendar. The clock is ticking slowly. Yeah, everybody's bored.
So these here are pre-digital.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it almost looks like you're trying to paint collages or trying to paint things that have multiple layers on top of one another. So you can kind of see where you're going to finally end up in a way, whether you were consciously knowing it or not, I guess.
Exactly, Michael. I didn't know what a pixel was at the time, but I think I was trying to draw them.
Yes, yeah.
You know, I could feel the technology in the air, and the faxes, and I would go and do temp jobs to support my habit, and I'd be in, you'd see there was just electricity flying through New York. I just felt this pulse, and it wasn't just the people, it was the pulse overall.
Okay.
And it seemed electronic in a way. This is a chemical bank. There used to be a bank called a chemical bank. Again, I'm showing quite a lot of these. Oh, June and December again. For me, a dog was not a dog anymore. I mean, I didn't know what a fluffy dog would be. This is what a dog is, but for me in New York, walk la dog.
Yeah.
It became walk la dog. So, because everybody's just out there marching and talking, and information is flying everywhere, and TVs and telecommunications were coming, and even on this is a big piece. It's oil. And I'm showing these because I think I do agree with you. It's kind of fun to see the obsession. How did we land in this medium? I landed in it totally by accident, really, totally. But it seemed to be fated.
Well, what? Yeah, I mean, I guess just from my observational point of view, and I don't want to interrupt you too much. It seems like a lot of these pieces are about a bigger thing that you're trying to express within the confines of what we would call the traditional medium of the time. And it's sort of a harbinger for you personally of where you're going to end up on all the technology thing, because this almost feels like you doing a preliminary sketch for doing something that you're going to end up doing in Photoshop with lots of layers and things like that. It's almost like you're doing a pre-production image of doing something very, very elaborate on the technology front almost. So, but I like the the sense that I like the juxtaposition with showing the dog, because this is like the fullness of life and what that means, and taking it beyond, here is a dog, or here is just a person in one moment walking a dog. You're looking at it kind of in the full scope of life in the city. If you have a dog in New York City, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And you can take that in, so many different subjects, but I see that as sort of this underlying thread in a lot of your work, which I think gives it so much depth.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's looking back, it's really interesting. So, I traded in reluctantly my oils. I was just forced, I had a few shows in New York, and I mean, the first one was in my 1-room apartment, really sexy. But you start and you just keep going, and you have to start somewhere. But the last show, it just was, the pixels were so tight. So I just said, hey, someone said, Roz, you're not painting with the right brush anymore. I signed up early to take lessons at the School of Visual Arts, and here I am. You can see, look how old this. Look at that rotary phone. Like,
Yes.
I'm painting this piece called Information Woman, and this is a few years. So it isn't quite. This is beyond. This is like I think in the late 80s or 90s. I'm already working on a Wacom pen, so I've skipped a few iterations of Atari, and I've started on an Amiga. But and you can see these, I don't know, I think they were called zip drives or something in the background, but look at those phones. When I talk to my young programmer now and I say, John Mark, you have to understand, I was painting, some of us were painting online, but we weren't really online. We were painting digital art. But it was before the internet, no email, no interruptions.
Yep.
I mean, and when you take an interruption like that, I was already showing with Sandy Garing Gallery, and doing some beautiful, luscious kind of paintings, but they were getting very tight. And then all of a sudden, this you take a step forward, but you really this is a kind of crude looking thing compared to what I've been doing. But this is my first one of my early digital pieces, not the first, but one of the early ones called Brush and Box, and it's sort of like a funeral for this brush. But I was just thrilled to death to even have the minimal colors I had. I threw the toolbox into the painting, which was not the thing to do those days. So now I'm into this new thing where the plug reigns supreme. It's this is my homage to the plug. Things were heating up a little bit. It was at that time, we're getting into the early 90s to mid 90s, I think, where we are here. And AT&T purchased 8 of these for their supercomputing facility when they're still there in New Jersey. I output to Chrome. I would take my floppy disk to Dugal, which is a big photo outfit, and they would make it into a Chrome. And I had these little shoot the burglar cameras. At first, I didn't even have a floppy disk. I took the image off the screen.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And this is an early show at Burns Fine Art. A friend of mine, Jane Scott, worked at Burns Fine Art. She liked my work and took a plunge. And this is, I mean, there was a lot of interest, and these were all digital paintings. It's a little bit of a low res photo. Lots of fun, lots of excitement. Things were, I was featured in Forbes magazine with David Hockney and some others. And I went rushing out, of course, to what am I offered for this floppy disk? And they interviewed one of my collectors, Jonathan Pardee, and he said, really, it's about the trust of the artist. Like they said, what's to make you trust someone where they make this file that they can repeat millions of times? Even then, the commerce part of it interested Forbes.
Right.
He said, it's the trust of the artist. I mean, you can make a lithograph over and over, I mean, and so if I said I was going to do 10 of something, he knew I would. But I was so excited to be in this with David Hockney and some other really good artists.
Yeah, no kidding.
What's that? What?
That's really totally awesome. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I went out and bought every Forbes magazine I could find on the Lower East Side, believe me.
I would have done the same.
I was very excited. Oh, that was 91. Yeah. And of course, as I kept painting the machines, as being, a gamer and everything, you've had such an interesting background too. The machines, I would always trade them in every couple of years to get the next biggest and best. And oh my gosh, I have more than a 2K floppy disk. I was like, how exciting. This is called Lost in a City of Dreams. This is like a commission, Al Gore. I am giving a history because, a lot of the presentations have been about what you're doing, and I will get to what I'm doing, but I agree with you that, I want to share this history. It gives an evolution. We talk about, I know that is, I'm kind of looking at we try to stick to some kind of format, but we don't have to, but, in terms of, evolution, I think this just shows it. This is a piece called, Electronic Directions Racing Down the Information Highway with Vice President Al Gore. And he actually signed 3 of these. This was a magazine, actually, physical magazine, in the, I think it was it was 94, run by Roger Sperberg. And he commissioned me to do the cover. I was working at the World Trade Center at the time, where I always worked. That was like my graduate school after School of Visual Arts, because they had no graduate school at that time.
Okay.
I just took courses. But I kind of made it based on the American flag. Americana is always, from Jesus to Coca-Cola to Wall Street. I'm always painting things about America. But actually, Al Gore signed 3 of these for me, and I have 2 of these still signed, and I'm really thrilled about that. He really was. He was in the forefront of that game.
Yeah, that's really neat.
That was fun. And then an exciting thing that happened, I also enjoy curating from time to time. This is the biggest thing I ever curated. I was starting to talk more about digital art and computer art, and Rico Maresca Gallery in Soho heard me and said, look, we sometimes go away from what we normally do, which is folk art and photography. Mainly folk art. And they said, but we'd like to do a digital show with you as the curator. And we worked for a year on this show.
Wow.
And Softimage, Microsoft, Apple, and Silicon Graphic, all of them all together in one room got involved in this show.
Wow, those were heavy hitters at that time.
Yeah, they really were. I mean,
Wow.
We had bands pulling up with huge Cray computers, and Shar Davies of Softimage did an immersive piece that was spectacular.
Well, and back then, I mean, Silicon graphics machines were going for $10,000 and up for the low end. Softimage, you had to buy the different modules. They were really, really pricey.
Oh yeah.
Software back then, people have no clue.
No.
Like how specialized this was. Can I ask, I do have one question for you. Being a woman in technology, did you find that you were sort of a lone female voice in this realm, or on the art scene? Because, at this point in time, I was in the male dominated game industry heavily at this time, and there weren't that many women. So what was it like? I mean, was it pretty equal at that point, or and I know art's been always dominated by men to some degree, but what was it like for you as a woman artist?
No, I don't mind speaking to that at all. I mean, and I've marched in every conference for, for women's rights and pro-choice since I had a brain, that evolved when I was 18. But I feel strongly about women being able to either be a homemaker if they want to. I mean, now that we're all at home, even men realize, wow, this is like running a corporation. It's work. But and it should be acknowledged as such. Absolutely, we should put a value on it, a monetary one on it, just to give it an equal standing, at least. But to answer your question, because it was so new. That's what kind of made it kind of exciting. I started a group called Picture Element and worked with 8 other artists who met at each other's houses. And it was so new, and we were learning it together. And that's what's so wonderful. Cool. When you're in a medium that is growing at a certain pace. I kind of feel like we're there again. I think Techspressionism has a very nice openness about it. And otherwise the arts can get into an ego contest really quickly. And
sure.
And I have one too, and I'm always wrestling with it. But I must say, at that time, the techies who were there and they go, now look, when you plug this in, this happens. And I go, oh, how cool. And my husband once said to me, he said, now that you know how woofers and tweeters work, he said, you're not going to respect me anymore. I said, yes, I will. But you know what? It was wonderful in that way, because you were learning, and they were pretty gracious. I mean, I felt some of the men who I worked with, were just fabulous. And they'd say, now look, when you do this, you want to plug this, you want that to work. Because we were learning together, and they were kind of amazed at the imagery that I was making. And of course, there were women techies too. I think by the end of the .com, when Silicon Alley and Valley were really, the bucks were just flowing in. There was some kind of adolescent, really snotty behavior going on, but that's something I don't forgive it, but I didn't have much of that. Not as much as you would think.
I was just curious.
Yeah. And, honestly, in the early days of tech and of everything, like even in film, Alice Guy, she was one of the early filmmakers, woman. And rarely do people even know her name. So when I can espouse other women, I really do. And women have been a big influence. I mean, Cynthia Panucci ran this wonderful art and science group that was great for a long time in New York. Cynthia Rubin, Annette Weintraub. She also was in Picture Element in this show. I think Cynthia Panucci was in this. I mean, Cynthia Rubin was in this too. And of course, Shar Davies. And this was a blockbuster show. I mean, there were people coming around the block to get in the show. And one guy I was working with was a Harvard trained architect who had done the Sony playground, his friend, and he helped, he just gave it gratis, but he built, Michael Davis, really great, smart guy, does great architecture. He built this thing for us. So it was like a jungle gym of computers. Some were at children's level, some were at other levels. This is opening night. Wow. We had 300 people. Kenneth Nelson, if you know that name, he's a pretty famous sculptor who worked with tensile technology with his work, and was a really amazing scientist and artist. He was also in the show. And it had several rooms. This is Michael Gelman down here immersing in Shar Davies' piece that night. My parents came to the show, and they came up from Georgia. And I remember my mother later saying that she said to my father as they were coming to the gallery in Soho, she said, "What's happened? Has there been an accident?" Because there were so many people.
Oh no!
Like 3 blocks. She had to stand in line to get in what really was my curated show. I mean, Rico, Roger, and Frank, helped with a lot of it. But I was like, "Thanks, Mom. Thanks for the confidence." But she had seen. I'd had other crowds at my show, but nothing like this. And really cool. It was really a wonderful experience. And it was, you were in those days of the gaming. I mean, it was up and down, but I was on a roll in New York City. And I also found that, I was also working at these different places, all at the World Trade Center. Somehow I lived close to the World Trade Center, and I was doing paintings about commerce and greed and just getting in there and taking part of it myself. I was getting paid very well, and I loved working in corporate as well as fine art. While I was curating code and showing my pieces somewhat internationally then, I would go to work and learn about fonts and all sorts of things that had real rigorous rules that I found engaging. And meanwhile, I was helping them set up the first new media, macromedia director files and all sorts of things.
Right.
You can interrupt me. You can see how shy I am now. I can talk. I can keep talking. But, and also I'm watching the clock a little so we don't go too far.
Yeah.
But Washington Pig is a piece that I still really love very much, but it's a multi-layered piece about greed and capitalism and all that's good and bad about America. It has For Sale in Washington's Eyes and Africa in his ear and To Go all over the map. And every man needs a wife and a dog and a gun. And I mean, there's not millions, but lots of layers in this piece. But I'm running along here. I want to show this piece, especially because this is the world's greatest bar chart. I would go into Lehman Brothers. That was another place I worked at, the World Trade Center. And we would do these bar charts, comparing how many millions of dollars Chase Manhattan Bank had made last year compared to this year, and how Lehman was going to help them make a gazillion more. And I came home at night and made this flash shockwave file. It's actually a still painting. I always still like making still paintings. And animation only comes in for me when I want to enter the painting. I want the painting to come off the wall to the viewer more.
Right.
So I went home at night and I made this painting that measures like just absolute nonsense. And let's see. Oh, I don't think I have we're working on John Mark and I, the programmer who works with me, we're rolling this up and we're bringing it back to life, but it's an interactive bar chart that is just full of crazy sounds and flags and noses and buttons, and you interact with the entire piece. That's coming soon. I'll share it with the Techspressionist group. Intelligent Agent, which was run by Patrick Lichty, who's part of our group and one of the founders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, co-founders. He actually was, early on a real player, huge player. And this is the first issue of Intelligent Agent, also co-produced with him, with Christiane Paul, who is the adjunct curator of digital media at the Whitney for many years. Amazing woman as well. And Beyond the Zero is about the world's greatest bar chart. And I dug this up recently because it's really fun to look back. And I mean, it wasn't like this was online at the time.
Right.
So, a lot of the things people say, well, I don't see any of your links to things. I said, well, there were no links.
Yes.
I mean, they were starting to be. Here's another piece called An Information Woman, where a woman is getting bombarded by her thoughts. She's absolutely drowning in her thoughts. I'm going kind of fast here. I'm going to play this for Techspressionism, but I'm just going to go in it just a second and just show you that a woman's face being drawn over time. And you go further into the piece and it builds and she's bringing that down. A little loud. And it goes on to the rest of the piece and the beach comes out of her elbow, and I'm going to get more into that later because that's a 5-minute piece and we just need to move along. This was an invitation in 2000 to Flash Bible, which was kind of a spiritual and technological view of all of our wonderful artifacts from Ajax to Coca-Cola. And I sent out this invitation, and I am right now also rolling this up. This was also done in Macromedia, Director, and Flash Shockwave, which isn't supported anymore. So
wow. Yeah.
I'm now going back to old emulators with John Mark again. I mean, we've been working together a couple of years. And
okay.
It's fun it's like finding a treasure in a treasure hunt. Like I go, you put this thing in your CD and it would play the invitation. It was very funny.
Oh my God.
And we had these pink couches where people would sit around and look at animations on the ceiling, short little animations. I don't want to bore people. How do you think we're doing here? We're making room. We're getting
we probably should be continuing on with a couple of the other questions, but I think you're sort of naturally getting there.
Great. I'm trying to share my process. I'm doing all these things in Photoshop, but I am moving into animation. But thank you for reminding me about process, because for me, the animations were always about going inside the paintings.
Right.
So the painting is there on the wall and you go inside it. It isn't so much that I wanted things to move. Walter Lika, a great champion of my work, who was the curator of, the late curator, I will say, of 17th century art, Vermeer and Rembrandt. He was a big influence. It's really interesting to talk about things that were going on at the time for Rembrandt. He was very technically adventurous with lithographs and not lithographs, etchings in that time. And there I am at this opening. I want to talk about this because the pivotal thing in your life, I'm talking about, oh, look at this, isn't this great? Believe me, I'm leading to something.
Yeah.
They never just stay great. And life was exciting. The .com was exploding. What could possibly go wrong? Well, I know that reading your background, you were there for the .com bust. It affected a lot of people. This was the entrance to our building at the Wall Street Journal Online, where I had the plumbest, most exciting job to create creative story tales. Like I could take 24 pages of the year in review, and I worked with other people to make it into a graph. So storytelling was big time coming in, but this story really brought me to my knees, and I'm moving along, but I do want to share this, if nothing else, and maybe go quickly into the DIMONscapes, the interactive paintings. But I actually I was in a bad way. I thought life is over. My husband and I both were high up in the .com. I mean, I had been paid $120K to go from Deloitte to the Wall Street Journal to have the most creative job you could get there, with a signing bonus of $20K. And this is in 2000. And then the .com came, everybody, people you didn't lose you were let go because they saw the .com coming down.
Exactly.
And Yeah, and then my gallery closed, and I'm so lucky to be alive, so I don't mean to be playing my violin, but it was a terrible time. It was a bad, terrible time for the country, and I was really lost. And I just was painting dumping containers for a few years out here in Shelter Island, not knowing what to do because we had to let go of our apartment, and there was just nothing was going on in downtown Manhattan for quite a while that could afford me. And I went to, I saw this show at the Metropolitan about icons, and it said icons were a source of comfort to a nation besieged. And I was like, whoa. I mean, I couldn't think of doing an art show. I thought, why? To show my wizardry, I can do web design, I can do paintings, I can, it just wasn't, I just couldn't do art for the first time.
Wow.
And I went and I did this icon of the Theotokos, which is the Mary of bright sorrow. And it's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of a prayer that you do for a week. I was the only professional artist in the class. Anybody can go take an icon painting class. It's prayer, and it's as far from Western expressionism as anything you could ever participate in. It's reverence, it's obedience to another icon, and you're copying. I mean, my Rabboni, my rabbi, he kept coming by and going, Miss Diamond, please quit moving your arm. Like you need to be diligent. I mean, I wanted to bust out, but it was a wonderful intellectual as well as religious exercise.
Yes.
And every layer means something and has symbolism, and icons are known for opening a window into the world of the painting itself for those who view it and have it in their space. And I have one in my space, and they have something about them. Yeah. And I came back, and out of me exploded this piece that I call Pale Male. And it's about the hawk pale male who found his home in New York City when his home was lost. Okay. And it's also about Christ drained of blood, and it's about finding hope. It compares Jesus to Nike and all the places I was in the richest, working in the most wealthy enclave in the World Trade Center. And I could play a little of it, or we can just keep going forward, but this is an immersive painting. This is my first, what I call my DIMONscapes. And
now, why don't you play a little bit of it just so we can sort of get a flavor of what you're talking about?
Real quick. Okay, I'll go into it. And these all have sound too, but I think I'm going to turn the sound off. You can do it over on the left. And this is all coded. And I mean, I've been doing HTML for years by then. And now I'm working with a programmer, but I really know programming, or have. It's in my bones. But this piece, I was working these multi-layers of Photoshop, and I thought, I came back from that icon class that I can share paintings that invite people in. So you look at this piece of Pale Male, 48 inches by 36 light box on the wall, and you click on the QR code and go inside the painting. So it might look like it's analog, and we often use old technology to get into new, but you're really going deep inside the layers of a painting, and all of it is coming up 100% to you until you get to the end. And you can play it back and forth, and it has an audio. And also, I feel most importantly, from the intellectual point of view, is it sources every single piece in a kind of bibliography. I mean, I feel like we're in the new Gutenberg press of imagery right now. It's images of images of images of images building to be an image. And Pale Male was done in 2005, and there's a Spanish version, and I'll go back. That's enough for people. I can, share the URL later, but if you go to palemaleapilgrimage.com online, you can find it.
That's awesome.
And, there is always a kind of sweet grace that sometimes happens in your life. I mean, I really was so down, like we've all had tragedies, but this was my biggest, when everything was lost in New York, it seemed, and that was home. But this piece was seen by the 9/11 Memorial Museum, along with millions of others that artists sent in, and they went for it, and they have it, and it is in their permanent collection. And I'm just, there's something about that it came around. I mean, that was my home. I mean, for many, from all through the 90s. I think I shared this with Techspressionism, but since then I've had several commissions for public artworks for nonprofits like the Shelter Island Historical Society, where they asked me to do a piece about 700 years of history of the Havens at the Havens House. And, when you love the process you do, and I don't care if I'm painting a dog's nose, I'll get in there and do thousands of images about it I'm into the idea that I'm doing an image that is made of so many images in a new language that I feel is building right now in our world.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, we're all kind of doing that a little, and a lot of painters are doing it, you know.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of their names, but I'll think of them. Judy Marehu, I think, or Julian Maretu, or that's close enough, but she's doing some wonderful mapping and stuff that she's not doing it digitally, but it's still reflecting the world we're in. Anyway, so I paste up this thing on the wall and put all the artifacts and things I've collected, and it's sort of like the X going across, the Y going up, but the Z is what interests me. I'm interested in the Z and how you can go in this flat space and make something like this out of all those components. I mean, this is the piece. And it's getting rather abstract, you know. It's got thousands of layers, and I'm compressing them, and then I'm saving the 100, and they're all different variant layers, and then I'm letting people go into the piece through a QR code, and I'm not going to go into this piece, or I could, I don't know, time wise, we're at like 45 minutes, I think.
Yeah, probably. If you want to show some of it, go for it.
I'll do it really quickly because the rest of it's just, you know, not as many of these kind of pieces that are interactive. But this is what the piece looks like on the wall. It's a permanent installation, and you can again slide through it, and all the layers come up, but the layers are visible in the very end, at least little pieces of them. So it is like a form of collage, and there is a voiceover.
Grandson Hooch Sherman shared that neighbors helped one another.
But I'm going to turn the sound off, which you can do. You have rights to do. And again, the information log that tells where everything is. Plus, they have a crossword puzzle they're selling. And on the crossword puzzle, they have a link to the painting. Because this painting, man, everybody, like, they hate me after they get it. They go, this puzzle is impossible. No, because, I mean, even that, look at that one little couple of inches of this piece. It's very hard to figure out what you're doing. You can see the sheep and the children's toys and the roof and I mean, tons of things at once.
Right.
So it's multiple layers of different opacities, you know. Real quick, this is a young girl, and she's going inside the piece and trying to find things.
Yeah. What are you looking for? Oh, yeah, the document.
So she's got her iPad. She's clicked on the QR code, and she just gets it. She's like, oh, I'm going to find everything in here.
See, actually, I like seeing this because this really shows what you're talking about in terms of somebody actually interacting and going into it. I love that. That's a great visual for your work there. That's awesome.
Thanks so much. Yeah, like in a minute she goes in and you can see her point to the wheel, and then you can see the wheel on her screen in there vaguely, but see how the wheel comes up on her screen.
Yep.
Oh, she just loved it. So Maeve, she was great. So I'm kind of rolling along here. This is process, how I evolved artistically and technically. It's all about paintings, which I call the DIMONscapes, and I do call them that, you know. I worked 30 years to make something like a DIMONscape, and it seems like a good name to me. I don't want it to distract from people doing it, but if someone does something, I like to always pay homage. I think it's very important if we're going to be a respected industry. You know, when I use anything in my DIMONscapes, it's not mine. I always call, or, you know, I call museums sometime and say, oh, I need this piece of, you know, the Battle of Bunker Hill. I'm doing this interactive thing. And they say, oh, great. And I said, I'll link to you in your museum. And I always get credit. So if someone does a DIMONscape, I'd love it. They just said, you know, I don't think women should be passed off in history. And so that's when I do speak out. And that gets you in a little trouble, but why not? So anyway, also while I'm doing these pieces that I call novels, because they take about a year to make the DIMONscapes, they're long, or 3 months if it's full time every minute. But I also started drawing guns. Our nation was being torn apart by guns, and I always loved drawing and painting. That's still the soul of me. And this is a Kalashnikov. Here's another one of my guns, and going in close up as I did before, you can see the layers. And these are big. I mean, these are sometimes 2 gigs. The DIMONscapes are 2 gigs. These aren't that big. They're, you know, some of them are close to a gig. And this is just the interior, one little couple of inches of the Kalashnikov. So it's like little paintings inside of paintings inside of paintings. I mean, you look at it, it looks like a drawing, but you can't make these kind of marks with a pencil.
No.
Even though I love pencils too, but I'm drawing with leaves and stars, and it has that edge of the digital media. I'm only going to do this a second, but this is a little recording of me and my process. I'm looking at a Kalashnikov on one screen and I'm painting it on the other. And
Right.
I guess I live in this box, it's become like a home. So I work pretty fast. This is the most recent. If you want, it says, like, what are you doing now? This is the first time I ever, Michael, I'm curious how you respond to this, but this is the first time I ever loaded my paintbrush with other people's work.
Oh, really?
Yes. Little kids, Latino kids and their families. I got this grant and I was very happy. NEA sponsored and New York State of Council on the Arts and some community grants, wonderfully generous. And then COVID came and they said they were going to work with me, the Children's Museum of Bridgehampton out here on the East End.
Okay.
And I was delighted. And I love the woman who runs the program, Leah Oppenheimer, just a wonderful person with really making these kids and families' lives. She loves them and they love her. But she had this course and then COVID came and we had to do it all through Zoom. Wow. And I loaded my brush with all of their artwork.
That is so cool.
And made this piece. Thank you. I mean, some people see it on my website and go, God, I don't know, Roz's art it's really changed, So if you don't hear this, you don't know really what it's about. But
wow.
La Vida on Campus for COVID. You go inside it and it's all their pictures and their voices and all their stuff. And they're so excited to be part of, I'm helping them raise funds by selling posters and
wow.
Artists have real power in this medium.
Yes.
And they supported me and boy, I'm supporting them. People love this little poster and they go, Roz, this doesn't look like your style. But intellectually, again, conceptual is part of it. And
yes.
Yeah, that's what's going on here.
This is like you being a composer. Using your aesthetic as the composing force to bring all the kids' artwork together.
Yeah, and I had to get screenshots off of Zoom and then their voices. There's voices in this of like, here's my bunny rabbit. I mean, we had so much fun online. And these kids, really, their drawings. The next generation, boy, art is a big part of their vocabulary. They all have an iPhone with millions of images. So they did some wonderful work. And I just put it together. And then I salute every single one of the kids. I don't know if you saw it in the credits, but they get lots of credits. And here's just, I'm kind of going to the finish line here and then we can keep chatting, but here's a recent piece. And when you go close up into it, you can see the kind of layering going on in it. And I haven't made it a DIMONscape yet, but it's after reading a book by Haruki Murakami. And it's just an amazing story about murder and Leica and the space shuttle. I mean, the Sputnik, where they took a dog into space, and there's tons of layering in here. And, like in this case, I buy these little hearts because you can buy them and then I credit them and say where I bought them in the info, in the footnotes. And I get interrupted all the time by things happening in our country. I respond, and latest series of digital drawings and pen and ink and also pencil of Lincoln. Because our world's being torn apart. I saw his face, and as angry as I am lately, I like to see both sides of things. Like even the guns, they're both sides of guns are good, guns are evil. It's got a spiritual aspect. Everything on my work does a little bit.
Yeah.
And attention. And here's a picture of John Mark and I working on our latest piece where we're resurrecting the world's greatest bar chart.
Okay, cool.
And the code going on is just, it's intense. It's so intense. An art story, which is something I coded in 1998, and it goes through all the years, and it's a little bit crazy still. I'm still trying to make it work a little better, but you can go to the years and see stories, you can see art, you can see there are lots of different ways to navigate. It's a new kind of way to navigate a blog. And I'm just going to end with, I went to my doctor the other day and just to get an EKG, see how I was doing. And I said, oh, can I take that? He said, sure. Yeah. So I said, I need it for my next portrait, which I think will look something like this. And I guess I can end on that, but cool. This is what my portrait, this is where we are, this is my last year. This is only like maybe a couple of months of the last year.
Wow.
And that's kind of what I'm doing in the DIMONscapes, you know? And
Okay. Yeah.
so,
So if we kind of put a bow on all of this and sort of bring this to a nice, what you would feel resolution, what about Techspressionism has drawn you into this? And where do you see things going from here? And I don't want to spend too much time because we run. I don't know if we're running too long, but I just am curious because you have such a good historical perspective on seeing both the growth and evolution of technology, where you're hopeful or where you think it might be going, and what role Techspressionism and you using that in sort of self-identifying as a technology-based artist in some respects, where you see this all headed.
Yeah, I know Colin's work. We've showed a few times together. I respect it. And when I saw he was doing this group, I got kind of curious, but I tiptoed in, but I found myself getting more and more interested. I'll tell you the truth. I love the community of it. My work is more than just tech and expressionism. I mean, I think it's cultural and it's
Yes.
not that others aren't, but but what I like is that it is expressive, it is about expression, and it's about a visual language and the community. And I love learning. I mean, in the late 90s, Picture Element, we were meeting, at each other's homes, and there was a community building. And the .com, people who didn't live through that don't realize how much it really did break a lot. I felt, at least in New York City. And out here in Long Island, I don't mind working alone because I'm always online with people, even before, COVID. And I have a little group I work with, I do, and I have meetings with, but I like learning from people, and I like seeing what young people are doing.
Right.
And I always like learning. So, and at a point as you're getting older, you have a lot you can bring to it.
Right.
And I like teaching, and even I did teach a little bit in the early days, but I got kind of caught up in the corporate because there was no master's when I really wanted to take it. So, or I could have taught it because I was so early on in that area. But I must say, I love the community. I'm learning things. I'm going to go make a non-fungible token. I mean, I thought we were over this kind of like technical language.
Wow. Yeah, no kidding.
I go, hey, Colin, I said, or Davo, could you please say that again? And it's bringing me in connection with some women who I haven't seen, like Darcy and some few others who in a long time. And I'm just I'm enjoying being part of it. I'm enjoying the meetings. And I also think that we are on a next wave. I think the AI and the immersive stuff going on is sort of where I've been going with my paintings, but I don't think I want to go into that. I really like just keeping the painting, maybe doing it. I want to have a touch screen where you can go inside the paintings. That's the next thing I want to do. But, I was at a conference at Yale last summer. I was honored to be there, but most of the people were with Unity and had on their, Odyssey headsets. And it was an immersive conference and gaming, but they invited me because they loved the concept of, wow, she has a painting that people are going inside. So I was very honored to be there. And I think we are on a wave, a second strong wave of coming up, and where all of a sudden the galleries, I mean, it's been very hard to be, as people have said, to be in this industry. So many doors have closed. I mean, I've had some wonderful things lately and throughout my life, but the typical gallery circuit, if I said digital, that's very threatening to them. And well, it should be, because you know what, we're the next big thing. And I've thought so for years. Along with beyond video in a way. I mean, video and photography is just one more thing I can load in this brush. One more thing.
Exactly.
There's no end. There's no end. And it's flat as a pancake, which is almost like, to me, like a spiritual concept. Like, I mean, I can't see God or goddesses, but I feel it. I feel it. The math is there too. So I think the artists using this medium have almost a new, for me, I have been saying this for a while, but I feel like we're the new visual hieroglyphics of language. It's a universal one.
Yes.
And all over the world, people can understand imagery usually, and you can bring people together. And it can be, we can be almost like the early cave paintings. Like, it's not just about the shock of that animal on the wall, but oh, let's understand that. Let's bring the next
Uh,
age. I think we have a new kind of calling and challenge as artists in this medium. Not to make mamsy-pamsy sweet stuff. There should always be challenge and rigor, but to make pieces together. And a new atelier I see forming. I already work
Yes.
with one, 3 people.
I totally agree.
Hey,
Yep.
don't you? It'll be a movie. You're making movies and paintings, and you'll make some sense out of all this chaos that people are drowning in, and we have the tools. And I can't wait to see what young people do.
Cool. Well, this has been exciting.
I had nothing to say as usual.
All
I
right.
have to say, I want to interview you too, though. I
Okay.
do.
Well, we'll definitely make that happen. I have to say that it's been really, really enjoyable, and for me, Techspressionism brought me, as you know, to meet you and many other artists that I'm being inspired by. So if nothing else, this has been a nice way to connect with folks that are out there that I had no idea about. And this has been really, really fun for me to do. I'm very honored that I got to sort of do this with you today. And
I've loved it. I have to say one more thing because it popped in my mind.
okay, sure.
I'm someone who looks backward and forward. I respect that we come from history, and I know you have that in you too, because the movement will not go without connecting itself to, like the etchings of Rembrandt and, the first alfresco paintings. But also, I feel very strongly that even though, yes, we are a threat to galleries, we are also an asset, because you can take, clients they can specify, as the machines get more powerful, they can specify, you could go out to brick and clay and anything that could be translatable. I'm always thinking about, I'm making this at 500 by 400 or 6 by 8 feet, and it's going to be over this building, or it's going to be over someone's mantle, and 6 by 8. And there is a tether to the physical, and besides showing in the physical gallery, you can take people on a voyage behind the work. So
Exactly.
sorry, but I don't want to be I'm not going against the galleries. I think we can work with them, and people still love physical space,
Well,
and physical things.
I think with all of this, I think it's going to be a redefinition of what a gallery is and can be. And I think that's the exciting part, is I think with every new really big jump, whether it's in technology or movement through advancements in our society in general, is that there's this growth period and experimentation during that time to figure out, what are we, what is this really about, or what could it be about? And artists have always, it's the imaginative people. It's the people that can see outside the box, see the possibilities that go beyond the structures that have existed to this point, and say, what can be? And to me, that's an exciting time for us as artists to be alive right now, because I think there's so many possibilities.
I think so too. And there are artists and scholars and people who are supporting us. Gail Levin, I went to Japan with her. Well, I come from a Jesus, even though I'm interfaith ministry. She's Jewish. We went together. She invited and wrote something about this. So people like this, and Helen Harrison. I mean, that was another draw for Techspressionism.
Cool.
And it's nice to have these people. I love what you just said about it, and we so appreciate these people who are jumping on board and giving that stamp, because we want to connect the past to the present to the future.
Exactly. Well, that sounds like a good way to kind of tie this up. And once again, Roz, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to this being up on the Techspressionist.com site for other artists and whoever else is interested in this whole thing about technology meeting art and being expressive of human emotion. So Thanks again.
Thank you.